We were seeing some movement inside the courtroom there. We're still waiting for the major arrivals. Let's go back to Thulasizwe Simelane and just get more on the legal side of things. And Thulas, we were talking before we went to Siphamandla about just what the fight is now, what the possible delay might be here today, especially when it comes to the application over Advocate Billy Downer. And I mean, is that something that is likely to cause a major delay to this case?
All right, Uveka, I sort of battled there towards the end to hear what you are asking. But let me tell you, it is fascinating just watching those arrivals of the various ANC leaders and other leaders in society in general and seeing what really looks, you know, like a scrum. If you think about a scrum in the game of rugby, it certainly looks like it. And as I was saying, I mean, it's the people as they arrive after parking, coming towards the public entrance to the court building, they really have minimal space to maneuver in that there's palisade fencing on both sides of the walkway leading up to the public entrance, and that's where that scrum has been forming of journalists wanting to pose questions to the various leaders of the ANC. You've been seeing Siphamandla Goge doing sterling work in as far as trying to press for answers, because the political dynamics are important, Uveka. It is important for us to hear what Ace Magashule has to say, for example, following the National Working Committee decisions that came out and were communicated by the ANC, talking about how they are concerned about what we've been seeing happening here at these court appearances. Right now, let me show you what's happening inside the court building. Just generally people milling around, and we're seeing Tutuzani Zuma, I think it is, surrounded there by a number of people. I see Carl Niehaus nearby, and of course a number of other people have taken their seats inside of court. So that what we've been showing you now is that scrum that we've been seeing happening, the political battle. But inside court itself, as we show you that visual, Billy Downer will be the man at the center of attention, as you say, with former President Jacob Zuma and that plea that he has entered for Billy Downer to be removed. In fact, we keep talking about recuse. It's not recuse. It's a decision by the court to say they uphold the plea and therefore the prosecutor should be removed. It's not asking him to step aside, as it were, to take ANC parlance forward, but basically it is a decision that a judge would make. Let me tell you, one of the things you will hear, Uveka, as part of the plea by former President Jacob Zuma, will have to do with Leonard McCarthy. And I do get a feeling that in the coming hours and coming days, we'll be reaching out to Leonard McCarthy, wherever he is, to try and get him to give him a right of reply, in a way, to some of the allegations we expect former President Jacob Zuma will be making against him. How does this feature? Where does Billy Downer come into all of this? Well, the allegation we expect will be made that Billy Downer was aware, in the words of former President Jacob Zuma and his legal team, Billy Downer was aware of political meddling in the case and is tolerant of that political meddling, hence him filing that affidavit that advanced the argument when the charges had been dropped, that advanced the argument that actually the prosecution should proceed. Former President Jacob Zuma will say that Leonard McCarthy it was or is a spy. There's no better way to put it. And Billy Downer was aware of this. I see Billy Downer standing up and I wonder, all right, no, the judge is not walking in. It's just an exchange of greetings between the various legal representatives there. So let me just play a clip that ties in, Uveka, with that argument of spying, because arguments of spying and conspiracies about spying will continue to feature highly. Take a listen to what former President Jacob Zuma said about this matter in 2019 already, about whether or not he's a subject of spy agencies of various countries. And that ties in with part of the arguments we are going to hear a bit later on today.
There were three intelligence organizations that met, had a meeting to discuss me. And had a plan to begin in 1990 a process of character assassination of Zuma. The reason why we wanted to character assassinate the Zuma's character was because he has a lot of information that he holds. Among that type of information, as a chief of intelligence, there are spies that are infiltrated by us in his organization. Whom we want to nurture, that they grow within the structures of the ANC to a point that at some point they will have to lead the ANC.
Let me bring this back then and bring in Mabo Nene, an attorney who's joining me for that conversation. Mabo, one of the things that I found quite incredible in my understanding of the plea and the arguments that are advanced and the allegation that Leonard McCarthy was or is a spy and holding Billy Downer accountable for that. I don't know. What did you make of that?
On that one, I can say that one would say Billy Downer had a duty to report any wrongdoing. So if, for instance, you are alleging that Leonard McCarthy, whom Billy Downer would have been reporting to at the time, committed a crime or a wrong against Mr. Zuma, and Billy Downer was complacent and did not report that, then if you want to then come and say that is gross misconduct, and it also shows that he has ulterior motives against you, those are the things you have to allege yourself. So they are a bit tricky now, how they come into the whole trial and his ability to prosecute fairly without favor and prejudice and such.
All right, in a moment I will bring up the argument about the fact that the NPA says these are, what do you call it in your legal parlance? Is it res judicata?
Yeah.
This has already been decided.
Yes, yes.
I will bring that up in a moment and play a clip of Judge Eric Leach, but not before I take it to eNCA's Dasen Tathia, who is tracking the march by the supporters of former President Jacob Zuma, who are gathered, and according to today, Msholozi Day, they are gathered under the hashtag Hands Off Msholozi. Dasen, what are you seeing where you are? We do seem to have a bit of a challenge with hearing Dasen Tathia there. I wonder if we can show you the visuals inside court for a moment. As you see there, the various legal teams standing by and just exchanging niceties, collegiality. Very Rue, of course, represents the company Thales, who are accused number 2 in this particular matter. They usually have an individual, a natural person who sits in their stead in terms of sitting there. I do see the number 2 actually somewhere there behind the desks there. I see the number 2. It would seem that we might have a situation where they actually might have someone actually representing them. There's a number 2 there. I do see that number because it's different from last week. Last week we only had one which showed number 1 where the former
Zuma, and that's why I'm here today.
Have you stepped aside? There are conflicting reports about you stepping aside. Have you stepped aside, Deputy Mayor? Now, on the appearance of the former president here today. You are also going back to court next month. Are you ready? Are you ready for your court case next month? Have you stepped aside? Have you stepped aside? Okay. That is the former mayor of eThekwini, Zandile Gumede, here, arriving at the Pietermaritzburg High Court. I'll tell you that we are trying to pose those questions to her, but of course, she is remaining mum on whether she has stepped aside or not. We'll try one more time. Mama, have you stepped aside? Now, some people say former President Jacob Zuma's charges are politically motivated. Do you maintain that? Are you still saying the charges are politically motivated? Have you stepped aside? Okay, there is no answer coming for that question. I can tell you that is Zandile Gumede, former mayor of eThekwini and the former chairperson of the ANC region in eThekwini, the party's biggest region. She's one of high-profile leaders who are here to support the former president.
Relentless as always, Siphamandla Goge, trying to get those answers, especially all the political shenanigans on the sidelines happening of this long-awaited trial there of the former President Jacob Zuma. They are at the Pietermaritzburg High Court. The trial expected to get underway today, but as we're hearing, there could be further delays, especially there with the case being brought against Billy Downer, the advocate, and the former president wanting him removed from this actual case. Let's go back to Thulasizwe Simelane. He was actually tackling this angle for us, Thulas, and we were talking about just how strong a case, or does the former president and his legal team, do they actually have a case now here? Do they have a strong case against Billy Downer? What are the chances that they might actually get what they want in this case?
So in terms of the arguments that he has advanced, Uveka, we know that the NPA is of the view that even the papers that they've filed are not in order, in that there are documents that are missing, affidavits that support the allegations of fact that they are saying, that they are putting forward in that plea. But in addition, Uveka, we know that the NPA is likely to raise the argument that says this matter is res judicata, in that it's already been decided, it's already been settled. Issues of political interference and whether or not that political interference has affected former President Jacob Zuma's fair trial rights in terms of Section 35 of the Constitution, and whether or not that should have led to the charges being dropped. And what are they talking about when they say this matter has already been canvassed and decided? Take a listen to Judge Eric Leach delivering that judgment in late 2017 from the Supreme Court of Appeal, talking about whether or not it was correct for Mokotedi Mpshe to drop the charges, and him doing that without wanting to take into account the views of the actual prosecutors, people such as Billy Downer. Take a listen to Judge Eric Leach, and then we can take the conversation forward with my guests here.
The exclusion of the prosecution team from the final deliberations leading up to the decision to discontinue the prosecution appears to have been deliberate and is in itself irrational. The case law that formed the basis of Mr. Mpshe's decision to terminate the prosecution does not, in fact, support it. On the contrary, the cases, including an appeal court decision overlooked by Mr. Mpshe, are to the effect that questions of abuse of process in relation to a prosecution should be decided by a trial court and not determined by way of an extrajudicial pronouncement.
All right, Thulas, well, before you take that discussion further, I believe we are able to connect to Dear Santhathia. So if you can have a conversation with him, please, about what he's actually seeing on the other side where he is in terms of the former president's supporters gathering. right, it seems we have a bit of a challenge there again, as Thulasizwe Simelane would say, a challenge. Let's continue that discussion with Thulasizwe Simelane. I believe he can hear me now. Thulas, if you can hear me now, let's continue that discussion on this case brought against Advocate Billy Downer to have him removed from this trial as well. Do we see that this is still, like, even though you've said that this seems to have been decided years ago already in terms of political interference and what this might mean for this trial, are we still likely to see the former president's legal team try to make this a dominant part of today's proceedings, as this trial itself was expected to go ahead?
Oh, without a doubt, Yuveka, you can expect Advocate Thabani Masuku, and I suppose today will actually be his chance for those who have not seen him in action to actually see Advocate Thabani Masuku in action. He's a ferocious fighter. I've seen him certainly at the State Capture Commission of Inquiry in those exchanges with Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo that would at times lead to the DCJ saying to Advocate Thabani Masuku, I've heard you, please let's proceed. So you can expect that he will fight ferociously in support of his argument that says Billy Downer has no quote-unquote title to prosecute in this particular matter. It's a bit technical, and fortunately we have brought people who are able to unpack it all. Ayanda Shazi, as well as Attorney Mabonene, both attorneys of the High Court, to help us unpack it all. Ayanda, Yuveka was asking about the strength of the case. We've talked about what the NPA is likely to say about the documents and supporting affidavits, etc., the plea itself, the technicalities of how it has been filed. We've talked about res judicata to say this has already been decided. What you're bringing up nothing new in terms of points of law. But what about if we remind our viewers of the whole importance and the import of the decision in Porritt and another versus the NDPP? That will be key in how Billy Downer responds to Advocate Thabani Masuku.
That's correct. In as much as you've mentioned that the attorney or the advocate that ZUMA'S team is relying on is very ferocious in fighting for his clients, over and above him fighting, he really needs to substantiate all the allegations that he's alleged. Because now he's not only dealing with the NPA as a whole, he's dealing with a particular individual. That's why he's saying that he doesn't have the standing to actually prosecute, which is why now Billy Downer, over and above him representing the NPA, he needs to defend himself, because now he's on the pedestal as well. So he needs to now show the court and everyone else that has doubt in everything that he has compiled that, you know what, I know what I'm talking about. These are the facts. This is the evidence that I'm presenting. I'm no way, in any way, impartial or being influenced by anyone, but this is the facts as they are. And then the court now needs to weigh out all the evidence that is presented by the state and also the defense, all the allegations raised by the defense, because they have not substantiated anything with actual documentation or supporting annexures. Some would say that it's more or less hearsay, and all the other allegations that they've raised are things that have already been decided in other courts. So for them to bring it up again is something that the NPA is going to be pinning on a lot.
Yeah, and there we see him, Advocate Thabani Masuku, there, making his way inside court. In fact, he just walked past there. I don't know if we've got a visual of him from inside court. He is working with two other advocates as well. So a formidable team that they've put together, and also an instructing attorney as well, also involved in that particular case. Mabonene, there you have it. There we see him, the Advocate Thabani Masuku. He'll be the man in the spotlight in how he translates the documentation that has been filed and exchanged between the teams into almost dramatizing it inside court and buttressing the arguments that he's made in documentation, fielding questions possibly from Judge Piet Koen, questions of clarity, and whatever challenges are thrown at him by Billy Downer and the rest of the NPA team in response to what they'll be arguing. The point I want to bring to you, Mabonene, that Section 106(4) argument to say, okay, If we are successful here, if that man in our picture, Billy Downer, has no title to prosecute, we are entitled to an acquittal right here, right now. That's bold, is it not? What do you make of that?
It's quite bold. It's quite bold because now we usually say before a case can even be brought for prosecution, it would have been tested for prospects of a successful prosecution and such. So the reasons and probabilities of prosecuting are there, and the grounds, if they are there, as they would have been since the case was incepted. So to say you must be acquitted on this, it's tricky, and it's going to receive hard challenges from the state, not just from Billy Downer, but even from the law itself, because I think it's going to be maybe, I don't know if it's going to be the first of its kind, where you walk away simply because the prosecutor didn't have title to prosecute you. So it's quite tricky, and legally we are all interested to hear what's going to be said.
And interestingly, in the Porridge matter, we've been saying that the Supreme Court of Appeal did not want to give a definitive answer on whether a person who's successful in terms of this plea is entitled to an acquittal. But what they did say was that it is doubtful, right? And there's also an example of where the prosecutor had fallen ill, and the decision was to say that, look, the prosecutor has fallen ill, but actually you can simply appoint another prosecutor. As we pause it for a moment, I want to show you that inside there, Advocate Thabani Masuku, I've just spotted Advocate Dalimpofu as well. He's also inside there, inside court. And that, for me, makes for a very interesting day ahead for the legal eagles inside court there. They're getting themselves kitted out in their robes. There you have it, the Advocate Dalimpofu. No confirmation on my side, to be honest, whom he'll be representing. We'll have to find out when he places himself on the record. But I can tell you now, Uveka, we are in for an explosive day, is my imagination, in terms of the arguments being dramatized and presented before Judge Piet Koen when the proceedings get underway.
Absolutely, Thulasizwe Simelane. I would imagine it's a high drama. That's what we're going to see inside and outside court as well. On that note, let's head on over to our colleague Desan Thatia. He's outside keeping an eye on ZUMA'S supporters and the march that is happening there. We did see the big stage set up earlier as well. So let's look at just the goings on outside. Desan, if you can hear me, what are supporters saying? What are you seeing at the moment?
Oh, Uveka, the supporters have certainly tested my fitness levels because, as you know, there was a march that started at Dales Park. It's just many of them have now just paused for a breather. We're not far from the court because that march started just after 9 o'clock. So what you're seeing now is a lot more organized than we saw during the last appearance. You see that there's been an active campaign to group everyone together. They're even wearing T-shirts now, Hands Off Jacob Zuma. This is under the hashtag Hands Off Msholozi banner. And many of them that are here today are also students that have joined the protest. So they are saying that they are 100% behind the former president, and they're planning to continue this when the march reaches Freedom Park, which is opposite the court. But it's not just the local supporters that have come through today, Uveka. I was talking to a gentleman earlier, in fact, there he is here next to me now. He says that he's come through from Soweto, and you're not alone. You've brought many of your other friends with you as well.
Good day. Yes, I did bring a lot of my comrades to come and support Jacob Zuma.
That's a long trip to make, eh?
Yes, indeed. You know, without any doubt, we're to come and support President Jacob Zuma, as he's our father, and we love him and we always support him.
And what's the message that you are putting out today, beyond just supporting the former president, with this march that you're joining today?
All right. My message would be that, you know, at first, with the NPA, the charges, there were 700 and something charges. Now the charges have been dropped. They've been, I can't say dropped, but they've been limited. I think now he's facing about 17 charges. So now that on its own says a lot about the case. You know, how biased they've been towards President Jacob Zuma. My message would be, even now, they are saying they have witnesses. My question would be, how credible are those witnesses? Yes, they might be saying they have 200 and something witnesses from the state, but how credible are those witnesses towards our president, Jacob Zuma?
So I just want to clarify something. You said that a group of you had come from Soweto. Have you come here as on behalf of your branch, or is this independent of that?
On that matter, I would say we came independent of the branch, because we did not come here with the blessing, because we did not need any blessings to come and support President Jacob Zuma. Hence we are here. We are here as individuals and RET forces.
Thank you very much. I'll meet you down at Freedom Park. Uveka, one of the supporters there, as I said, there are people that have come from afar. I guess it sounds like many are heeding the call that was made by the suspended SG Ace Magashule during that last appearance. You'll remember that he had said back then that he wants to see masses of people here. And he had even said that there would be quite a large contingent that have been coming, that would be coming from the Free State as well. So we're at one of the intersections now. This is where the marches have stopped. You'll see that the march is also being led by the NGWEMA. They were here during the last appearances as well. They're attracting a lot of attention as they make their way through the CBD. We're probably just about a kilometer or less from the courthouse. So that is where everyone will converge. And just one thing before I throw back to you, Yvette, is that you would have recalled in a conversation that I had with one of the organizers, Bishop Rusi Dube, this morning. He was saying that the former president had specifically told him to communicate with any supporters today to remain united. And if there was any threat of dissent or any booing like we saw the last time around, the former president would not, in fact, address any of those that were gathered there.
Tathia, thanks so much. Definitely getting our team fifth there. This entire trial, from Siphamandla Goge in rugby scrums to this long walk for Tathia there. Well, the person who is able to sit down is Thulasizwe Simelane. Let's go back to him. And Thulas, before we get back to the sort of legal discussion around what might happen in court today, especially with regard to Advocate Billy Downer, let's just talk about